I love this. I love being up on the stage. It's a wonderful thing. And this is a great, one of my favorite new teams. And I'm so excited that everyone is here for our theater team. And we are going to be having a fantastic presentation on voice and movement in VR by our incredible team leader, Mandy, with the Theater Team Project, as well as her wonderful guests. So I'm going to let her introduce them. I get the honor of introducing you to Educators in VR. How many Educators in VR fans are there out there? Give me some hearts. Any fans? Is anyone out there? All right, beautiful. Now, Educators in VR was founded in 2018 right here in Altspace, and it is dedicated to integrating immersive technology into education, into business, into training, into life, into everything, research and students' life, you name it. We have over 24, we're about to have 25 teams. Our team projects are designed to focus the conversation on a specific niche, a specific area of immersive education. And think of them as special interest groups. And this is our third meeting, I believe. We're up to 3 for our theater team that is really expanding and exploring the potential for what is happening in VR and beyond for theater production. And boy, the list of meetings and speakers that are getting lined up, get excited. There's some really exciting topics that are breaking the boundaries of what you may think of as VR when it comes to performance. It's all nice to have somebody up on the stage with a microphone playing a guitar and singing. That's one thing, doing improv, doing all this skit, reading, whatever. These people are making it real. They are pushing every board you can imagine when it comes to performance art in this not so new, but people think it is, metaverse technology. So get ready. I'm going to introduce to you Mandy, who is our amazing team leader for the theater team here. And I'll come on down closer. Big theater, come on down. Don't be afraid. We do bite, but you'll enjoy it.
All
right, so come on down. And Mandy, it's all yours.
Come on
Also,
down.
this event is being filmed.
The
floating camera bot, Fox
filmed.
camera bot, is up there, and just be aware that that it is being filmed, and it will be on our Educators in VR YouTube channel soon. So, all right, thank you all. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, everybody. All yours.
Thank you, Laurel. Hello, everybody. If you can hear me, let's get some emojis up. Okay, fantastic. Hi. Hello, my name is Mandy Canales, and I am the team leader for the theater project in Educators in VR. As Laurel mentioned, we're working on a ton of stuff this year involving theater in VR. Our last panel was about stages in the metaverse. We're talking about voice and movement today. In the future, we're going to be talking about writing in VR. We're going to be talking about should we adapt Shakespeare and how to do it. We're going to be talking about improv. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. So please stick around. And also, if you like what you see here, if you like what you hear, and you want to be involved, speak to me or Laurel afterwards. We'd love to have you on. We're looking for volunteers all the time. Or if you have an idea and you just want to contribute, please let us know. We'd love to speak to the community's interests. So don't be shy. Come up to us. We love new ideas. So I would love to start this panel off by introducing you to Dasha Kittridge and SpaceVR. They will be introducing themselves um, with a few fabulous sentences. Dasha is someone I'm working with right now, and yes, please give it up for Dasha Kittridge.
Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you. My name is Dasha Kittridge. I have been kind of thrust into working in VR theater by way of immersive theater, which is what I was doing for almost 10 years before I took a workshop at South by Southwest, which was improv in Avatar, and got to put a headset on and really improv in Avatar for the first time, which then made me desperately search for anyone that was doing that kind of work in LA. So I found Tender Claws, which was currently in the process of casting The Under Presents at the time, and auditioned for them and got a job with them and did essentially what was like a almost year-long storyline that just we kept getting kind of extended. So it was almost like a LARP that just was like continuing indefinitely, and we didn't know when it was going to end. So we had to have all these open-ended storylines, which was extremely, I feel like I learned a lot, even though I had done a very similar thing in immersive theater for a long time. So my background, I came from kind of the dance and ballet world, and then got into musical theater, and then film and TV, and then immersive theater, and then now VR theater. So I'm currently working on a few other projects now. I'm getting to finally learn some of the other platforms. I think we were talking about this earlier, that you get very kind of used to and comfy in one platform, and then it kind of feels like, I don't know. I was afraid of kind of dabbling in other platforms until just recently and getting my bearings, other places. So that's me.
All right. Thank you so much. If y'all could get closer to the edge of the stage here,
Sure,
I want to
yeah.
make sure we get all the way to the back.
Oh,
hey,
and one,
everybody, emojis
I
for
will.
Dasha.
Thanks. I'm actually going to be teaching. I'm going to become an educator this semester, because I'm going to be teaching at the Brendan Bradley Institute Integrative Technology Lab at Fish. So going to be. I feel like I just learned this stuff, so it's kind of crazy to be immediately teaching students. But I just think that if we're not going to do it now, then when? And I feel like these students are really going to be more like collaborators and colleagues, rather than teacher student kind of dynamic.
SpaceVR, you're nodding your head because you are currently a teacher in VR chat at Gob's Improv Emporium. So why don't you tell the audience a little about you and your experience?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I totally get exactly what you're talking about, for sure. I have that notion about like people who are entering classes right now for all these different new media and everything. There really are people that we're going to be working with on like a peer level to flesh these things out. As for my background, I am Space Vaquero, aka Chris Avila. And I have an almost purely improvisational theater background. I've been doing improv for at least 15 years now, and I love it. I'm going to do it as long as I can physically. And this has been such a huge boon to find that it's also happening and being actively developed in virtual reality. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was in South Africa for an improv festival and had discussed with improvisers from elsewhere around the world that they were experimenting with virtual reality shows and really trying to work out how that would even operate. And I was so intrigued. And then we all know what happened around March of 2020. And I got a headset not long after, just to socialize. And I immediately began seeking out who was already doing improv in this space. And my journey did begin here in Altspace. And it led me directly to Stevie in the front row over here, who's doing great work with Improv VR. I'm sure we're going to talk about you a little bit more tonight. Some stuff. Give it up for Stevie. As far as scripted theater goes in VR, I was involved in 2 productions during the pandemic here in Altspace. I was part of the Peter Pan show, and I was part of the Aladdin show that was put on last year, which were really great testaments to not just the performance side of things, but the technical props, costumes, set pieces that are possible even in a social platform like this that is tailored to communication more than it is to those other aspects. And I'm constantly working with people like Stevie to kind of experiment with motion and find out what translates into virtual reality or doesn't. So that's me. Oh, and he mentioned, yes, I do teach the long form improv course for Gob's Improv Emporium in VR chat also.
Yes. So what I've noticed is that the folks who I'm mainly around in VR theater, just like you folks, we're very intrigued by it. We're like, what's that? I want to know more. However, I know a lot of folks in conventional theater who are very not very interested. They're a little shy about it. They're they're not convinced that you can actually use your acting and movement from IRL into VR. And I was just wondering if you could share some of those transferable skills that you've been able to bring over from real life acting, stage acting, immersive acting into this space right here.
Well, I feel like the skill of listening to your scene partner, but also I do a lot of interactive theater and theater where the like participatory theater where the audience is kind of like another player, another actor per se in the piece. So in live immersive theater and VR, I feel like it's just amplified with that's kind of all you have a lot because you a lot of the time because what they are offering or your scene partner is offering, especially if it's improv, is all that's all the clay you kind of have in the moment. And if you're kind of too focused on figuring out your next line or your next what's a funnier version of this joke that I had tried to plan out, you're going to miss a lot of the opportunities that are being given to you by your partner, by your scene partner, or by the player. So I feel like that's definitely something that just kind of copy paste like is like definitely just as important and um, wildly important when you have limitations like we do in VR right now. What's your first thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I think to answer this question, it's worth it to touch on alternatives that people have been using during the pandemic, like Zoom, particularly for improv. Because what I did at the very beginning, very, very beginning of the pandemic was I started doing audio only improv because I did personally enjoy doing Zoom improv. There's something about suspension of disbelief not being able to maintain as easily for me anyway from seeing people in that grid. It almost feels like I'm at work because I have to do the same thing at work, see people in a grid while you're on the clock. When you're seeing a live improv performance with people who are just wearing their street clothes and maybe they're like in a black box theater that's totally nondescript, maybe a box, some stools, it's easier than in Zoom when they're clearly sitting in just different rooms to suspend disbelief. And by the same token, when it's audio only like a radio play, then it's even easier to suspend disbelief because you're just hearing it and your mind can fill in the blanks. Zoom and virtual reality, I think, represent a halfway point between IRL performance and audio only performance in different directions. So in Zoom, you have the benefit of seeing the facial expression, you don't get the physicality. And here we have the reverse. We have a lot of the physicality and usually zero of the facial expression. And so with that in mind, the tools that are relevant to IRL, like physicality in improv, in my case, surprisingly carry over very well. Like a lot of the same principles. And like you were saying, listening 1000%, especially since we have to operate with a delay. Audio improv too, but especially in virtual reality, because we have to process the physicality and the audio. You have to be so much more mindful of that. And having a background where you're thinking about listening all the time, I think sets you up for success in here.
Yeah, I also feel like the use of space is naturally just kind of instantly transferred and something that, it's always going to be, I think, more interesting to see a character that's kind of approaching you or getting close to you. Um, I again, like it's hard for me to think in kind of proscenium terms because I've been doing like 360 theater, and so my incorporation and my thinking about VR theater is only kind of in the context of 360 theater. So so I feel like some of the things that I'm saying may not be true for like, the kinds of VR theater that happen where like there is an audience like this and a stage like this. So there is an actual proscenium going on. But I feel like in immersive, it's just so thrilling when someone comes and like caresses your face or whispers in your
Yeah.
ear. And that's really, you can just truly, it feels the same when someone in VR in a disturbing, creepy avatar is like slowly creeping towards you and getting really close to you. It really does feel real in you don't think it would, but then I played like these giant crabs in the underpresents. I played all sorts of kind of non-human avatars. And it was nuts. I feel like I really was experimenting with space and proximity a lot there. And we had a lot of free reign to kind of after we were up and running for months, they were just kind of like, we trust you guys. Yeah, you can add, you don't have to check with us before you like add these like storyline plots. So, I had a skeleton character that was like didn't really speak very much English and like made noises more. And yeah, it was completely confusing for a lot of people, but confusing in a fun way to try to get to know this creature, So I feel like there's so much, I don't know, there's some safety because, it's not your body, like I'm not going to make you feel like, there's a bubble that we can put up here to kind of give ourselves some physical space, but in real immersive, live immersive theater in real life, you always have to be constantly taking in this feedback loop of like, is this person, as I'm getting closer to them, are they backing away? Does it seem like they're not okay with this? Okay, I'm going to choose someone else because they seem really nervous. You kind of always are having this thing in VR. You kind of feel like you have a little bit more free reign to be a bit more, I don't know, even like violent if your character is violent. You're not going to like slap them across the face if you accidentally move your arm like across their avatar's face.
Right.
So, well, yeah, I feel like I've been playing around with proximity a lot.
The proximity and movement and those types of things. One thing that I was talking to Space the other day about was voice, because I realized that when I've been performing recently, I've been thrashing my voice because I didn't warm up, because I didn't even think about, oh yeah, well, when I'm performing in real life, my voice, put a headset on and I don't want more of my voice. Why didn't I do that? I don't know if you could talk a little bit about how you train your voice or how you bring that those techniques into this space. They seem relevant because my throat has been very sore.
Sure.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
with these like crazy voices that we make for these, non-human avatars. You'll be trying to match what you see, and you get to a really strange part of your voice that is hard to maintain or do,
Right.
in repetition.
And
Definitely.
I have the sensation when I do want to talk about like warming up your voice and stuff, but I have this, you reminded me, I have this impression that after I take my headset off, that I could probably reach more and more varied voices without the headset on, because it is exerting pressure on your face. I wonder about that. Like, am
Mhm.
I not going to push myself as far because it's literally on a very subtle level a little bit uncomfortable to be in virtual reality with the technology the way it is still. Like, we have to acknowledge that. So what you were talking about, Mandy, the idea of like warming up your voice for performance in VR, I specifically, so full disclosure, Mandy is one of the students in the long form program, which is why we had this discussion. During our class that touched on physicality and voice, I wanted to lead with that because we were consciously thinking about that topic. But I do think we forget to take care of our physicality, not just for performance, but in general, when we come into VR a lot of times. And like you were saying, like, there's all the stuff we can do to engage physically with the environment and with the audience and with each other as performers. But we also have to be extra aware of our physical environment around us, because we are in a little bit more of a precarious position by not being able to see what's around us all the time. So it makes sense to be, I think, a little more mindful of self-care when you set up the idea of performing in virtual reality. So I'm going to start taking my own medicine, I guess, and warming up more often with vocal stuff.
Yeah, for Tempest, I had to do a serious warm up because after the first show, I like literally lost my voice, and I was like, "Why did I literally do this for every in real life immersive theater piece? Why did I just kind of be like, I'm fine?" I had to do like the harpy character that does a close your ears if you're not ready for a shriek, going like, and like doing that over and over again is gonna kill your voice if you don't
And you're
warm it
like,
up.
I'm in a
ready.
game. It's fun. It's no big deal. It's not real, but then it is because it's your voice. And oh my gosh,
Well, it's true
now
that
I
you
can't
don't
speak.
project as much because the mic is so local, and you don't actually want to scream. I feel like I'm really glad that a lot of people videoed their perspective of the underpresents, because I learned a lot by watching my own mistakes. People would post them on YouTube, and I'd be
Oh
like, "Oh
wow.
my God, my avatar." I'm like, I'm a cat, and I'm like leaning over, pretending that I'm like digging in a litter box that is sand. and my avatar is like broken in half because I didn't pair up with someone and say, hey, like, where is the limitation of this avatar before it breaks? Or, oh, when I'm really excited to meet my cat sister, like, we freaked out and we were yelling and it sounded terrible for everyone. And they probably hated that moment because both of our mics were blowing out for like 30 seconds, you know?
Like, no. Which brings me to really my next question is about constraints, because there's obvious constraints, right? You can't, unless you have your facial recognition, you can't tell what's going on in the face, and unless you have full body, you can't move completely. So what are some of the other constraints that you found? You just mentioned, like, leaning over. um, uh, and what did you do to kind of I guess um, bring yourself out of those moments, to recognize it and say, okay, how am I going to uh, practice or rehearse in a way that helps me create character looking a certain way or sounding a certain way, or maybe just deciding to totally change the character? What have you done to, like, are there any maybe IRL practices? I don't know if it's like puppetry, or if it's mime, or any of those types of exercises that you would maybe rely on. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that on two things in particular about limitations in virtual reality. So obviously, like I touched on earlier, there is an inherent delay in you saying something, someone else hearing it, them responding to it, you hearing it. There's a lot of time in there that you have to account for. And in improv in particular, that can seem like it's, forever and a day.
Yeah.
But I had the pleasure early in the pandemic, I think it was around 2020, summer 2020, of learning from an improviser named Joe Bill, who his specialty, I would argue, is like audio only styles of performance. He invented a format called the Bat, which is a herald in the dark. And a herald is like a classic long form show structure for an improv show. And the Bat is basically that in the dark. So it's inherently an audio only show. So when he did this
Wow.
workshop that I was a part of, we were doing it through this audio only platform. And he said, look, there's no escaping the delay, obviously. We have to learn to work with it, and it should become a tool that we can play with. It's part of the performance now. And we spent probably like a good hour at the beginning learning how we could not necessarily use it to our advantage. I mean, it'd be great if we could find a way to do that, but to acknowledge it fully. And so I try to make that very apparent, like when we're doing stuff in the long form course. I think that the fact of the delay, coupled with the practice and improvisation of always being, actively listening, or like they say, listening like a thief to grab onto those details that are being provided to you. I think virtual reality improvisation has the opportunity to become like a very thoughtful, like, form of improvisation, because we have to pay so much more attention because of the visual, tactile, and auditory like limitations that we have. We have to pay much more attention just because we're in here wearing like 2 pounds on our head. I'm exaggerating, obviously. And then the other point is, like you were talking about puppets and um, the other kinds of limitations, like what kind of practices can we do? The field of vision is obviously a limitation too. And in like traditional theater, like let's say you're just doing a straight up regular traditional stage play or even an improv show, it's typically best practice to cheat out, as much as you can, so that the audience can see you
I've
get a
been
good look
kind
at
of
you.
trying to do that.
Yeah, I've been trying to do it right now too. But you don't have the benefit of your full peripheral vision like you do in real life. So that's something I think that's still being pieced together. We've definitely played around a lot with that over in Bob's Improv Emporium to try and see how much we can get away with cheating in a way that's semi-satisfying to an audience that is oriented in a traditional way. And one of the exercises that we did go through during I think the very first class we did was one borrowed from IRL, where one individual is the puppet, the other person is treating them as if they are the puppet master or pulling the strings. And they have freedom to go all the way around that person, so that by the time they are behind them, the person who is the quote unquote puppet is now the one who is guiding the motion. And the puppet master has to follow with their hands above as if they are still technically pulling the strings. And that helped us find where everyone's FOV was ending pretty distinctly. It's like it stops right here. That's as far as that person can see when you're next to them. So keep that in mind. So stuff like that.
I found that exercise so fascinating because it really opened my eyes to really how the field of vision that I had and what I could do with it and what to anticipate and what not to react to or not to assume anything that is happening in my outside of field of vision.
Right.
Sorry, Tasha, I had to
Yeah, no, I
mention that.
totally, I agree. I feel like there's also just so many more contingency plans that you need if you're going to do like a show in VR and like charge people tickets for it. If both of your actors are in the same apartment and their internet goes out, you need someone to you need contingency plans for all of this stuff because of the fact that it's not like a show where you have an understudy, you call them a couple hours beforehand and swap stuff out. With Tempest, we had a stage manager who knew the whole show. So if something happened, they would come in and finish the show and give some in-world reason that suddenly their Prospera was a different voice. So having contingency plans for if you're, I think if you're getting together and doing group improv, it's not, you don't have this risk of kind of like embarrassment or like having to refund tickets per se. But if you're claiming that like this is a done thing and we are charging you tickets for it, I think you just there's a lot of you have to have like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, maybe even a plan E in terms of all the permutations of like how things can go wrong, and also teach who is performing the cues for which will start happening if suddenly people can't hear you or your frame rate is dropping or whatnot. So that's one thing that I think is definitely a limitation that's like something that you wouldn't really think about. The other thing is teaching the performers some of the like back end like tech and server load issues. Like when I got into the Underpresents, I was like, oh my God, I have this like thing where I can just pull out props. This is amazing. And I just like pull out tons of props and be like, and like we didn't know that like the more polygons you put in the scene, it like starts breaking everything down. And so we were like just like ruining our own scenes sometimes by just like plopping a bunch of new spawnable props in there. So I feel like there's some things that I wish I had known before I'd like ruin actual moments of my own. So that's another limitation with like having to test the limits of the room and the server load and the instance that you're in before you do an actual show. And then there was one other.
Never thought I'd say
thing
polygons as much as I've said it this year. Never
Yeah,
said that word before.
Me neither.
Anyway, you were saying something else, sorry.
Oh yeah, the voice and the not blowing out your mic and where that, as a theater performer, you feel like I feel like I want to project to our wonderful blue skinned, person in the back, but like you don't actually have to project it. This feels very real. Like the spaces in VR feel very real. So if you're a theater performer, you inherently start doing these things that you've been trained to do. So in a sense, I feel like people that coming from film may almost have some sort of it's a little bit more like the intimacy of filmmaking and like that the audience is really the camera and like you're setting up the shot that you're trying to curate by like placing them in different places in the set. But finding where the breaking points of things are is I think something that is really important to do before you kind of call something finished or ready to present. And in teaching, I think I noticed that I can learn so much by watching myself in a mirror with my movement, but inherently I'm not going to as soon as I start actually, acting in a scene, I'm going to have some other isms that I'm doing with my hands, with my head that I wasn't doing in the mirror because everything is perfect. You got your mirror face, you got your mirror movement is down, like you're doing it well in the mirror. But I think I would encourage more to like genuinely practice things of have people pair off and give each other feedback because that was way more helpful for us in our Tempest rehearsals, or just any VR theater that I've done rehearsing, is like that's where I really feel like I got the feedback that actually helped the performance of like, oh, I didn't even notice I was doing that, and correcting things.
Right. How many stage managers and directors do we have in the audience right now? Emojis? Anybody? None?
Not
All you
today.
theater practitioners, definitely take notes, because I was taking notes. These are fantastic ideas. Like just the contingency plans upon contingency plans, because we theater people like to be organized, and we like to have our schedules and all those things. And I think we've all learned to have the B plan, the C, the D, the E, F plan. Wow. Yes, I agree. Yes, that's such a great point. So I want to make sure, because I wanted to touch upon the limitations, because I didn't want to say this is all unicorns and rainbows. It's so easy, because it's not. But I wanted to also make sure to talk about some of the unexpected positive things that you have encountered while you were performing in VR.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the most obvious, maybe not that unexpected, but one of the great benefits of being in here and doing this in here is that I'm now working with and meeting people that I probably would never have any contact with or inkling of in real life otherwise. There would be no way for us to even find out about each other. And so that has been just a great benefit, is finding these people who are finding each other because of their common interest in doing this very niche thing, which is interesting. And then also the amount of expression that's possible through avatars in VR, particularly when you're talking about like VR chat and some other apps that allow you to go that. Oh,
Oh,
I thought Dasha just
lost
disappeared.
Dasha.
And B, we'll have the backup
Okay.
Dasha come out here. And
Backup Dasha. Where's backup Dasha?
yeah. Yeah,
Kinda
just
dropped out, but
the amount of expression that's possible through avatars over there, but even in here in Altspace, where all of the avatars have the same design language, and where you can tell it's an Altspace avatar by looking at it. Hi, welcome back.
Yay! Talk
I've
about the
been-
things we have to anticipate also disappearing.
Yeah. But I've been
Sorry about
amazed
that. Everyone
by-
just froze, and then I was like, "Oh, did what just?" Okay, and then everything disappeared. So yeah,
so
that
used to it
wasn't
now,
just
though.
a test on everyone. That was
Yeah.
actually happening.
Oh, make sure to come up a little bit closer to the end of the stage. Okay, Chris, continue.
What I was saying is, even in here, I've been amazed by the technical wizardry that people have used to make these avatars even more engaging. Like during the Aladdin show, we had incredible work done by creators like Nira in here, who just blew me away with how much texture they were able to add to these forms. So yeah, shout out to Nira. We've got some hearts already, for sure.
Yeah, throw some emojis up. And then Dasha,
Oh.
any unexpected positive things? I don't know if you were able to hear my question.
Yeah,
before
no, I heard
you
the question. Yeah,
left the metaverse
before my world collapsed. I don't know. Like I really wasn't expecting to like cry with strangers, like hugging the air in front of me. I just like I really did not think that I was gonna have like such a back and forth emotional journey in the underpresents. That was like a special piece, because that was a world that was always there, that like, I would be a roaming character and then I would leave and come back, and I would meet players over the course of months and build actual relationships with them. I married my cat character, married a player in the world. Like I'm married to some teenager in the middle of the country where my cat character is. But I mean, I feel like I really got to know these people, and I still will never know who they were. There's just something so cool about this kind of mystery that VR and immersive and interactive theater in VR is capable of. It could be anyone around the world, and that even you don't necessarily have to even speak the same language. Like I noticed that one of the players didn't seem like they spoke English. In the underpresents, the players couldn't speak, which was making everything a bit more difficult. So they were always gesticulating and kind of miming everything to us, and we could speak and kind of be like interpreting what we thought they meant. So, but I knew that one of the players didn't seem like they spoke English, and I chose to find that player with one of my avatars and characters that spoke kind of in sounds more, and like we had this whole kind of bizarre scene together that we went on this journey down into the depths of the world, and they helped me kind of learn how to say a few words and like kind of learn how to speak. So I don't know. I just feel like there's all this potential, and there's all I just can't wait for more. I feel like if you're a performer, you inherently are already kind of a creator in VR, because you have to create a lot of your own. I don't want to call it choreography. But it's much more interesting to watch a character that is in more constant motion like this, rather when they're telling you a story, than watching someone who's telling you a story like this. I mean, and that's something that in real life in theater, you're like kind of always shying away from indicating or kind of overacting. And so I think mask work has a lot of is really helpful to if you wanted to practice something before putting a headset on, because that forces all of the expressive, kind of explaining what's going on into your body, because you don't have your face anymore, which is very similar to VR. So
Right.
sorry, I'm answering the question in like all sorts of tangents.
No, this is great because you just completely rolled into the next question that I
Oh,
have. And it's, folks here they're teachers, they're students, they're researchers, they're folks who are just interested in this topic. We don't have acting schools to go to yet for VR. I mean, we have, our random workshops that we have, or the classes at universities, but we don't really have anything that's consistent that people can look to for, next month we're going to do this and that. And maybe that's something we could talk about later. But anyway, maybe that's in the future. Hopefully it is. What can people do right now to kind of practice the medium? I know in VR chat, when you go into VR chat, you have your own little home space and you have a mirror and you can practice in front of that. But without any kind of, I guess, exercises to focus on, um, it's hard to know if you're getting any better. So, what would you suggest folks do to just kind of limber themselves up and get used to performing?
Can speak to that in improv terms, for sure. And the first thing I would say is, whatever you're trying to do, just do it. I know that sounds like a given, but honestly, if there's something that you already are familiar with IRL and you're not sure if it can cross over into virtual reality, you have to try it. You have to see if it falls apart, or it has to be modified, or if it works perfectly, or it works better in virtual reality, which may be the case. And again, I have to give props to Stevie here, because Stevie helps me all the time when I have this bug that I want to try something out. I will call up Stevie Boy and Triseki, and I will say, "Hey, I have something I want to try. I think it's going to blow up in our faces, and it's not going to work. Let's find out. Let's find out as quickly as possible." Like, for example, we discovered that, like, so a lot of in short form improv, which is like Whose Line Is It Anyway style, discrete little games. There's lots of guessing games based on pantomime and gibberish and stuff like that. And depending even on the social app that you're in here, you may have a totally different experience when doing something like that. And that's something that we figured out while we were in here. For example, we only have hands in Altspace outside of our trunk and our head and our neck. So you had no idea I'm portraying a cactus right now because you can't see the L shapes of my arm. That's the specific thing we ran into the last time we met. Just little things like that. Like, we take that totally for granted, that if I go like this, I look like a saguaro in real life. But in here, I could be it looks like I'm waving my hands. It looks like I'm getting arrested. We don't know with this kind of avatar. In VR chat, it might be a little more obvious because you do have joints and you have arms. So I would say on the improv side, find people who are doing it, or just get together with people who that you know, or even that you don't know. Just find a group or make one and start trying things. And if you want like discrete examples, improv night is basically an open jam every Saturday. I'm sure you can consult with Stevie about that. In VR chat, Gob's Improv Emporium has a workshop on Saturdays as well. That's free to come to, and anybody can drop in. It doesn't matter your experience level is. And there are obviously programs coming in development right now, like the long form program we're doing over there, that can help you to get more formalized training and performance. Yeah.
There are also a bunch of really awesome Discord groups where I agree. Like I think it's probably more fun and more interesting not to just kind of go into social VR platforms trying to wander around and find like-minded people, but to find the like-minded people first
Could be
and go in
dangerous.
together into a private instance. So yeah, I mean, I think VR Live, that Discord is really wonderful in terms of kind of they're trying to really list all of the things that exist in this field like in one Discord so that you can find the people that are doing this show or that show, or maybe ask them questions, or maybe ask them if they're gonna hold auditions for their next piece. It's really not that large of a field yet, so I think it's and all the people that are working in it seem to be very accessible and kind of happy to have a conversation about what they're working on or what they find fascinating about the field. So I think the Discord communities would be a great place to start. It's funny because like VR workshops are kind of like the thing that I feel like I've been asked the most about, like, where can I learn this? So we're developing a workshop for Hubs, which is not a great platform for the actor, because again, there are no legs and we just have a similar thing with no elbows and stuff. But so there may be a workshop available there soon where, it'll cover a certain amount of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think there should be more curriculum and more events. So I'm really glad that you are doing that. I think that's really important work that's happening, because there's so few places to kind of, especially kind of for free, if you want to dabble and find out if this is something that you like doing. There are certain workshops which are pricey at conferences, but then you have to go to the conference, and so I do agree there should be more. And I've only been doing this for a couple of years, so if you have been performing in VR for a couple of years, I don't think you should feel like a newbie. You are part of the group that is doing it, that is the level of professional that many of the people that they're performers in this space are. So experience equals professional level to a certain degree. So if you've been doing a lot of it, there are things that you may know that I don't know yet about this platform, for instance. I mean, in terms of what translates better. So not having imposter syndrome and just kind of like faking it till you make it and just doing it and putting on little pieces, I think is a big part of it, of just kind of not feeling like an amateur, but just being like, no, we're going to do a piece. We're just going to be a 3-day thing, but we're doing it.
Can I tack on a point to that? Because you reminded me of something, which I think is so important. But you're right. Like, people who are doing stuff now are automatically just pioneers in the space because they're actually doing it. They're finding where the edges of things are, where they break down. They're creating whole new formats and new events. And I don't think that you should worry about, like you said, imposter syndrome. I don't think you should worry about whether or not you already had real world experience in the area. If you're interested in it, you should just start doing it right away. A lot of people have come and gone who have real world improv experience, and then they come into the VR space and they maybe do like a show or two, and then you don't see them ever again. But the people who have the longevity in VR improv, like Stevie Boy and Triseki, have been going for 4 years, coming on 5, right? Pretty soon. Cool. Groups like that, and like Gob's Improv Emporium and VR Chat, these are folks who did not do improv before getting into virtual reality. They realized they wanted to pursue it after they were already in this medium. So you have a head start, and you should not feel like you're not equipped to start engaging with theater and improv. Just start doing it. And I think the results speak for themselves. Stevie Boy and Triseki are hilarious, and they started in here.
Great. I love this message. Just do it. Just get up and do it because yes, that's what we love. This is an inclusive space. Love new ideas, and I love meeting people who are like, I don't know, and I'm like, me neither. Let's not know what we're doing together.
Yeah, like we're about to choreograph a bird dance for the first time with wings,
Yeah,
and neither of us
Dasha
have done that
and I are
before,
gonna
and
choreograph a
we're gonna
bird
call it
dance soon.
art.
So that ends my questions for you all, but I really wanted to open the space for anybody here who have questions for Dasha or Space Vaquero. So if you all want to raise your hands, we will
We'd
call
love
on you.
it. Yay.
Anybody?
All right. And thank you. This was just so informative. And I loved how you deal with the issue that their avatars have limitations. We have to deal with those limitations and things. But we hit with through MREs and other platforms, there's all kinds of ways of dressing up and costuming our avatars, but there's still those limitations. Thank you for bringing those up. Really appreciate that. So if anyone has any questions, please hit the raise hand button in the lower right corner. We would love to hear from you. I would like to know about the challenges of interacting with scenery and props in VR.
Oh man.
Oh, yeah.
I think we both have a lot to say about this.
Yeah.
It is so much harder than real life. I mean, just to grab it in the right position to make it look realistic with something you're holding. I mean, we had our Prosperous staff in Tempest, and if you didn't just grab it in just the right way, it just looked totally like, okay, we're in VR and you're holding a fake prop. But then magically, like as soon as you really grab it the right way, it's like it's all just you believe it, So
Yeah.
fine tuning kind of nuance of like choreographing your grips with props is something that like there could be a whole class just on that.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like not having that same tactile input changes the whole game. But once you do have that thing with you, it's pretty much part of you. I think almost
Right.
more so than in real life because you can do then almost anything with it. But those same aspects of set pieces and props in VR that make them what they are and make them so enticing and magical can also be almost a an obstacle in disguise. We experienced this during the Aladdin show where we had an elephant walking through the theater, and I think the very first time it came out,
As per usual.
yes, somebody in the audience grabbed it, not knowing that you could, and so it basically flew around the room. It looked like it was getting crumpled up like a piece of paper, and we had to act like there was never an elephant. We're like, there was no elephant.
Yeah, having your audience permissions set properly, like in hubs with Onboard XR, which I've hosted since we've started that. We quickly made a big mistake in the first or second round where like that the audience could grab objects that were supposed to, it was like the screen that we were demonstrating something on, like an audience member grabbed, because you can grab from super far away, and if the permission levels aren't properly set up, then yeah, your audience can unintentionally, or even your fellow actors can accidentally pick up things, and there's a lot of mistakes that end up happening constantly. There's also a weird thing with sync. When things aren't synced up properly, people don't see
That's my next
the
question.
same objects in the same way and the same space. So you may think that you're holding something, and to someone, if the sync is off, your
or
audience
something
could not even
when
know
you
what you're
have
talking
set
about.
changes, when you have set changes that are done through MREs or world building technology, when those move, they move at different times based on when somebody entered in, if the clock is set upon, it's automated. And so somebody will see a stage go up and you're still in your underwear, that kind of feeling. It's just, where you're caught off guard.
I discovered a lot of those things live, embarrassingly, in the underpresents, where I was like, look at that thing. And the stage act was like different for the sync wasn't up, or object wise, because the underpresents would clear out all objects after they existed for a certain amount of time to kind of help the server load. And so you end up having to kind of occasionally check in to be like, you see what I'm talking about, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like ask
Yes, I
questions
do.
of your audience. I think if it's interactive theater, very helpful to find out if some of these things are going wrong to kind of troubleshoot as you're still in world and performing. So yeah, I guess question, you can't really do that if this is like if you're in a situation where the audience is not supposed to speak. So I've been in a position where I'm allowed to ask the audience, like, you see what I see, right?
yeah.
I don't know how you
Right.
get over it if your elephant is suddenly gone and you're not supposed to
Taken away.
talk to your audience.
Yeah, we just had to
we
wipe our
we had
memories.
someone in a car that was supposed to arrive in a car, and instead of the car, their avatar arrived, and the person saw the car, thought they were in the car, but the audience didn't see the car because it came in later. So
Oh,
yes,
wow.
love those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you saying, Chris?
I do think that this particular issue is probably going to be smoothed out as the technology gets better. Probably
Absolutely.
soon. Yeah.
Definitely.
Other
So any other
from
questions,
the
please hit the raise hand button. We would love to hear from the audience. I know Pat and Tony, there's some amazing talent that are in there. So please hit the raise hand button. Now, you talked a little bit about voice, and one of the things that we love about Altspace is the amazing, powerful audio. We have the megaphone, and we have all these. And if you really understand voice acting, you can have some fun. And during the Halloween, one of the things we love doing is we teach people how to whisper when they go on megaphone, and they can hide under the floors, and they go, I see. And it sounds like somebody's whispering right in their ear. Can you talk a little bit about being restrained of voice? A little more about how do you use that and, really play with the tools we have for ambient and as well as, amplified audio.
Yeah,
Might have
using
more on
spatial
this one.
audio.
Yeah.
Spatial audio is
Yeah,
something I feel like I played with a lot off the bat of
Mhm.
being a discoverable character in an open world setting, and kind of finding the edge of the spatial audio, and then either approaching from far away while like singing a song and being like doing my own thing, and being kind of just doing my own action and leaving space for the audience to have a mystery where they're trying to figure out where the sound is coming from.
Mhm.
I think planting little fun kind of moments for your audience using those tools is, naturally we have spatial audio in real life, but
Mhm.
it's something that kind of came in a little bit later in VR, and so it does still feel like this magical thing sometimes, or sometimes it prevented it, like a restriction where you feel like you should be able to hear someone if the settings and fall off, like testing the fall off could really like make or break your show, I think. So testing the different settings of how wide that spatial audio bubble is, um, to make sure things aren't overlapping in ways that you don't want them to, is super super important. And I wish there was more kind of voice alteration stuff going
The
on
voice
Oh,
mods.
yes.
Oh,
Gosh,
oh,
that
hey,
would be
come visit us
awesome.
during Halloween. The voice mod thing is insane.
There's a
Oh,
lot.
okay. Yes, clearly I've
Yeah.
been in the wrong platforms for that.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
And
we have
But yeah,
all
we
kinds
had
of
a little bit
wackadoodle
in
stuff there.
we had a little bit of that in the Underpresents and Tempest, with like certain characters, like the harpy had like a voice just naturally when we were in that avatar, our voice would have this effect on it. And people love, I just wish there was more customizable and easy to use if you're like not really a back end tech person, like ways to
Right.
add that to
For sure.
pieces. So I can't wait for like what's to come in terms of that space, because I feel like we're still just kind of like first glob of the constantly
It
melting
is.
and refreezing iceberg.
Now, I was messaged by somebody in the audience a question, and this is old school. When you're performing, so I'm going to amplify a little bit of what they said. When you're performing on a stage, you're singing out to the stage because you're lifting your head, and you're playing to the audience as well, and you do cheating and things and paying attention to the audience. And but there's people tend to build the theaters and spaces where our avatars are little tiny. The people in the back row, you look like postage stamps. They're little. How do you? And we can't zoom in. 2D you can zoom in, but in VR you can't zoom in. It's hard to see. How does the avatar arms and movement and things, how do you exaggerate it, much like you do in a real theater? How does that change in your relationship to, hopefully I got this question right from who sent it, but how does that physicality change the play to the size?
I think it is important to be obvious and committed with what you're doing in the kind of spaces you're talking about. We definitely saw that in the stage shows that we did. But if you're doing a show that's like a regular stage show, I think it's important to include aspects beyond the avatars that make the story apparent to the people at the back of the house. When we did like Peter Pan and Aladdin, I don't think that audio at the back was the problem, because that was easily taken care of by the megaphone, etc. And I think that the team that did that of friends basically made really good like costume choices where things were like so bold and colored in a specific way. Like, that is Captain Hook right there. I'm not going to forget who that avatar is, because they've got such a distinct palette and way of carrying themselves. I think it is important to, looks like you were saying, it's so amazing how like intimate you can get with the audience, especially I imagine in stuff where you really are up close to them, and you can have like that almost film like closeness and subtlety. I think that it's important to be of a mind when you're performing in a space like this in VR, that you do have to act like you're in a theater, or perhaps a Disney Channel original show. Everyone like they're in a theater production, even though it's on television. But yeah, you do have to be mindful of that. So I think the fact that we made our characters so distinct from each other and the costuming choices were really bold was helpful in that sense.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think
hopefully that
physically
answered their question.
that's
Yeah,
true.
go ahead.
I think like you were saying, yeah, physically you do need to play to the back of the house, and then kind of split it up, because as a theater maker, that means that then you're projecting more, and that's not what you should be doing and blowing out your mic. So you kind of have to like dissect it apart and do the larger gesticulation and then not be overpowering with your voice. So it's a bit of kind of slicing some things up.
Yeah. The
Fascinating.
we have our cultural heritage preservation team leader, one of our leaders, Lita, built a 1-to-1 scale reproduction of the Acropolis, and it includes several of the original theaters when it was at its heyday. Does not like now, when it's at heyday. And if you have not seen that theater, I recommend you see it. It holds thousands, 100,000 people, and it is it's a historical accurate reproduction where the orchestra was down in front on the stage, which we would call the stage. Up above, sitting up in I don't know what even to call it, up above it was the area where the performers performed. And it was so acoustically perfect that they could be heard in the back of the room. When I think about performance in VR, I think that kind of theater represents the challenges that we face, where we want to perform for the large audience, but we have to overcome all these technical difficulties, and as well as where do you put the band? Always a problem. Where's the orchestra go?
Where do we put the band?
Yeah, and so, but we learn from that history, of the challenges that others faced in the past, and now we're creating new history. So thank you very much for being the new history makers and doing this. This is really amazing.
So much for coming here and speaking with us and giving us so many ideas, and I'm so happy.
Thank you for having us.
And this was so fantastic. Everybody, emojis for our fabulous guests. We don't have a lot of time to hang out, but if you can hang out, if you like what
and
you
the
saw,
next event is
the next event is a social the week after next, and it's where we're just gonna hang out, we're gonna talk, we're gonna get to know each other, and very loose, very casual. So if you have a question that you thought of maybe after this, that you're like, hey, I want to talk about this with somebody in 2 weeks, you can talk with them there.
Okay.
I will be there. Laurel will be there. Who knows? Maybe Dasha and Chris will be there.
Beautiful. The rest of the team. And if you'd
lots
like
of-
to get more involved with the theater team to help to pull these events together and coordinate speakers and stuff, please talk to us, because we love having more people involved in making this all happen. So thank you,
And
Mandy. You want to take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, just like Laurel said, if you are interested in joining us, let us know. Or if you just have an idea of what you'd like to see, definitely tell us. We want to be inclusive. We want to reflect the community. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your time. Thank you to the fabulous guests. Thank you, Laurel, for having this theater team made possible.
Thank you. And thank you to
everybody
our
have
filmer.
A good day. Yes,
thank you, our filmer. You'll find this
Yes,
on
thank you,
YouTube.
Jason.
Yay! Fox is here, and thank you.
you.
And you'll find
Everybody
this video
wave
on YouTube
yes,
shortly.
Absolutely.
And all of our mod team. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.